Welcome to the Fox Den. Here we've got Kevin Keane. He's a lead deployment strategist for us here, lead engineer on one of our clients. And we're just going to have a conversation around Kevin's background and what he's been working on.
It's great to be here. Look forward to talking to you guys.
Awesome.
So how did you get at Foxtrot? Start there.
Well, it's a long story. I guess the lead up to Foxtrot starts with my journey to getting to know Palantir Foundry, because that's kind of the unifier for all of us here at Foxtrot is our relationship to Palantir. Out of college, I worked for Optum, or a subsidiary of Optum, that primarily focused.
What's Optum?
Optum is a subsidiary. A lot of levels of subsidiaries here. Optum is a subsidiary of United Health Group. That it's like kind of their tech branch, essentially, to keep it like very simple. And under Optum, there is a smaller branch that focuses just on federal work. So out of college, I started working with this Optum Serve, which was the organization, and coming out of that, I was kind of worked on some small projects for the first couple of months, but then I was put on a project to support Operation Warp Speed, which is the rollout of the COVID vaccines and therapeutics. That was our role in that project was essentially to support or provide technical support for a Palantir Foundry instance that was used to track all of these different vaccines and therapeutics across the country. So I got to know Palantir Foundry very well for, I would say, 2.5 to 3.5 years through that contract, and got to really enjoy working within the platform, got to use all parts of it, got to learn from the Palantir people on the project as well as quite a few other people within Optum also.
And what was your role coming into Optum? What were you hired as?
Essentially just a consultant. Like
Really?
just a plain consultant, yeah. I didn't have any real technical background. I was a business major in college, so yeah, no real technical background. I mean, I knew how to work Excel. That was actually one of the preliminary questions for that project was, do you know how to work Excel? And obviously Foundry is nothing like Excel, but I'm glad I said yes that I did. So that kind of led me to be here, honestly. But yeah, that was kind of how I came into that. And again, got to work on that project for about 3.5 years. It was a great learning experience. After that project ended, I went back to working on more traditional consulting projects and just didn't enjoy it as much as what I had experienced on this Operation Warp Speed, whether it was the velocity of the project or also just the software that we were working in, because I had taught myself so much about Foundry. So that's how I came to find Foxtrot. I wanted to continue working in Foundry, and that's kind of how I got here today.
Foundry kind of breaks your brain a little bit when it comes to like software development, right? Like once you're in it, you kind of can't go back to anything else.
No, yeah.
How was that learning curve? So like, there's a lot of people that reach out to us on LinkedIn and they're curious, like they want to get into the Palantir space. They don't have a tech background. So how was that learning curve, that transition from like business to actually being an engineer now?
I would say within Palantir, it's probably less than other systems, just because it's so intuitive and so easy to learn off the bat. I mean, again, I had no real coding background before I started working in Foundry. I had no technical background, but everything was very intuitive, and the kind of thought around the ontology and the structure around the ontology makes a ton of sense in my mind, how everything is woven and interconnected. So I didn't think that the learning curve was that high in that sense. However, I will say, when I was learning Foundry, the documentation was not nearly as much or as comprehensive as it is today. So that was obviously a little bit of a learning curve as well.
Yeah, I remember the old training portal, and
yeah.
it was so difficult to like navigate through it at the time. But I think that the best way to learn is like you just get your hands dirty, right?
Yeah.
Like you just get in,
Exactly.
just get in it, and you try to work it, right? And then you run into problems, you solve them. And I think that, when we're looking for people that are successful in Foundry, that's like one of the number one things is that addiction to problem solving.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. And yeah, I mean, when we were coming on this project, the Palantir developers that were on the project were so busy like continuing to build that they didn't really have time to train us. So it was just all on us to just go explore and just try to find things. And obviously the platform is a little bit more limited in its capabilities then, but we had a great time for the first 4 months just kind of figuring out how stuff worked on our own. And it was honestly the best learning experience you can ask for, because it really genuinely makes you learn everything by yourself.
And you said you had full access to the stack, so you
Yeah.
got to be back end, you got to build the ontology, you got to work in Pipeline Builder, you got to go and build your actions and then put them in place in workshop.
Yeah.
And just the full thing. A lot of the times at bigger companies, we see people get stuck in one area.
Yeah.
Right. So you never get to learn like really the power of Foundry because you're just stuck in the back end or you're stuck in the front end.
Yeah.
So like that's a huge value add for you.
Yeah, and there were components that we focused on more than others. With it being COVID data, it was a lot of data analysis, data analytics. So that kind of actually fed in well to the business background, and because it's all just data at the end of the day. So that fed in well. But as the years went on, we got to work on more and more parts of the platform and kind of unlock more and more capabilities.
It's incredible. I mean, I think a new topic we could talk about, new word, AIFDE, AI analysts, things like that. Have you been using that at all?
Yeah,
How's
definitely.
that going?
It's going really well. I mean, it's just immensely powerful what you can do with it. I mean, I know.
What is AIFD?
AIFD essentially is your AI forward deployed engineer within Foundry. It essentially is an assistant that can access your entire stack and help you perform stuff at a much faster rate, and also perform things that you wouldn't necessarily know how to do. I know that's what we've been using it most for, is to just accelerate development. It's allowed us to take projects that would normally last 2 months and bring them down into 2-week projects, and that's even including the QA process. It's incredible how fast it can work and how efficient it is, and how accurate it is. I mean, we've seen AI within Foundry, even in the last year and a half, go from something that was a little less accurate, a little less reliable, to something that we can now fully count on. And I think it just shows the progress of that product within Foundry.
Yeah, I've seen it be used in a whole bunch of different ways. There's one way where essentially they're version controlling everything and then pushing it in 2-week sprints, and then they're using AIFDE to give you that summary between the versions that tells you this is what that 2-week sprint was, right? So they have their like Jira board that they're managing that 2-week sprint on, but then nobody has to go and like create a summary. It's AIFDE that's creating that summary. Or it's like, you get this error that's coming out, and then boom, you just say, hey, what's going on with this error? Points you in the right direction. So then there's not this whole like investigative process. It's just boom, I can go and solve this problem super quickly.
Yeah, that's crazy because you already could get to like an MVP pretty quick in Palantir. That was the cool part about it. Past couple of years, you had your standard, code repositories, pipeline builder. You make your workshop, right? A couple XY charts, whatever it is for the client, and they're astonished, right? They're like, "How'd you build this so fast?" And now you have AIFDE, and now it's like, "Hey, I'm gonna go. You go on lunch, come back.
Yeah.
I'm gonna show you something pretty cool."
Yeah.
Like it's insane. Like we've been using it to build demos. So I mean, it's just like we myself and Ray, we're building like a USG demo, and I'm like, here's the write-up for it. What can you do? And it built the whole ontology, and notional data, everything.
Yeah, we literally took a UI UX from one of our partners, and we put it in, and we basically just plugged in all the data sets, and we're like, build a workshop. Yeah. And it just built it. But it's like, I mean, there's still stuff that you have to do, right? But if it can get 90% of that work done, now you're turning that 2-month project into a 2-week project, right? And something that I was told by somebody at one point is that, like, if you're a taxi driver and you're the best taxi driver versus like the worst taxi driver, maybe over the course of an hour, you're 15 minutes better than the worst guy. Yeah. In software engineering, it's like the senior guy versus a junior guy could be like 100x more efficient. But that senior guy that can now leverage AIFDE, you're talking like you're talking exponential delivery.
Right? I mean, Jensen Wang was just at my commencement, and he had a really good point. He said AI is not going to replace you, but the guy who uses AI better than you will, right? So I think this is a very prime example of that with AIFDE.
It's a turbocharger for the person, right? And whether you want to use it or not is the part of it. And the people who are going to win are the people who dive in and they end up learning how to use it.
Yeah, we've even been using it for non-net new work, just to go back and check work that we'd done before. And I'll be honest, I was skeptical about it. I thought there's no way it's going to be able to understand all of the human context within this workshop, because sometimes there's just a lot of like institutional knowledge that's in there. But it understood it. Even with no context, it was able to dig through there, and it found some things that we corrected in the future. So even for like QA purposes, it's really, really useful.
But the ontology is what's so important there, right? Because the ontology is that encoding the complexity of your business process. So when you have that ontology built, AIFD can reference that, and then it understands the complexity of the business, and it can actually reference those points, right?
Yeah, it makes a really good doc. I mean, it's great, right?
Yeah.
And I haven't used too much of AI Analyst. I don't know if you guys have.
I have not.
Yeah, it's pretty robust with analyzing data.
No, I've used it basically just to do I built kind of like a cool workflow where it's just like an operating system for the Toronto Maple Leafs, right? Like
Yeah.
guy from Toronto, right? Try to fix the team.
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's possible, but if you just have this ontology encoded, you can use AIP Analyst to basically just be like, hey, reference this, only these object sets, and I'm going to ask you specific questions around these object sets. And now you're not talking about any hallucinations, anything like that, where it's like I'm referencing this specific data, and AIP Analyst can point me directly to it. So like as a construction company, sure, I can ask like, how can we be more profitable? It'd be like, cut down on your labor hours, use smaller equipment. But when I have that ontology built, it starts to go, hey, on project 1, 2, 3, 4, you're using a 50-ton excavator, which is costing you $550 an hour, whereas your budget has it in as a $300 an hour. You have a 8-ton excavator that's sitting on this site not being used right now. You should take this excavator, move it over here, and take this one, move it over here. And then not just giving you that, but also saying, do you want me to make this move, right? Because you have the action built into the ontology. So then you can just go, yeah, I want to do that, right? So then now you don't have to have a dispatcher that's sitting there and knows everything that's going on to be able to be like, oh yeah, we're going to switch this, and then him to make the calls and everything like that. It's just instant. Like, this is what we need to do, and this is the action that we take. And then you're tracking all the downstream effects of that action. So you start to see, hey, did we actually save money based on this? And then it can make better decisions moving forward based on that feedback loop. So it's like, once you're in the platform and you're capturing all your decisions, you're creating that moat for your business, where it's like these decisions that you're making and the downstream effects of them, you're not going to get caught by your competitors, even if they dive into Palantir after you, right?
Yeah. It's something we're seeing as well. Like we're using in one of the apps that we're developing, or one of the workflows we're developing, we're incorporating that same sort of like feedback loop. AI suggests some potential solutions for the end users. The end users go and take that action. We track that action and then feed it back into the AIP agent, so it makes a better recommendation going forward. And it's really powerful. Yeah.
Absolutely. Can you talk a bit more about the deployment that you're on?
Yeah, so the deployment that I'm on is essentially turning Foundry into a product, and it's trying to better, in general, it's trying to better the visibility into the healthcare supply chain for many different organizations. It's a stack where multiple organizations will be present, and they can share data with each other or choose which data to share with each other to essentially increase visibility within the healthcare supply chain.
What's your biggest win in Foundry?
I honestly think it's something that I would call it a close to win. It's something that we're close to rolling out. We are building a procurement suite for for our client that I'm working with. It is in the end of QA process right now, but essentially what it'll allow it to do is it'll allow some of the procurement staff for for all of the organizations that are using our service to essentially move from working off of multiple screens and having 50 different tabs open at the same time to working in one place with an AI assistant.
Nice.
Yeah, and complete traceability to see who's taken action on what at what time, and that will allow us to inform those decisions of future procurement agents or future procurement specialists that may have to answer those same questions in the future. So essentially taking all of the disparate data points that they were dealing with before, and all of these different tabs that they had to go back and forth on a daily basis, bringing them into one place, and then tracking all of their actions so that they can improve their performance moving forward and improve their efficiency moving forward.
So how many people does that free up? Do you know?
We don't know yet. We're still rolling it out. But from the discussions that we've had with them so far, they seem to think it'll be a complete game changer. It'll allow them to work at a much more efficient rate than they did before, and allow them to get through a lot more of constraints, essentially, than they were before on a daily basis.
And this is in a platform that's going to have, it already has multiple customers, but it's going to keep growing and have more and more. So if you think about the return on investment from a tool like that, it's like the more and more customers that they get, the more and more optimized it's going to be. And then also, it's kind of like a neural network almost, where like the more and more people you get connected, the more value it is for everybody.
Yeah.
Right. Because sure, you can share this data, you can share the data, right? Or you can choose not to share the data, but the insights from everything are going to be available to you.
More and more optimization.
Right? That's right.
And again, this one suite of applications can be used by any organization that is within our platform. So it could be used by, say, 50 different providers at the same time to help them manage their constraints all at once. And also it's customizable to the different organizations as well. There are obviously different save state configurations that they can have. They can permission the different sub applications in the suite so that only certain users can have access to, for example, one of the sub applications, whereas another subset of users can have a different subset or of application views. So it's very customizable.
So each customer has their own individual security settings within the platform.
Yep.
Super cool.
So what is I'm curious to know like their clients' reactions, because it's very hard to quantify Palantir Foundry to a lot of people.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the hardest thing with like sales, right? Like
What's
this
the
is the best
ROI?
thing ever, right? But do you have a week for me to tell you why?
Yeah.
You know? So how does that conversation go? Have you been involved in any of that? Have you seen, what they use previously to using that, and have you seen that click moment for all those people?
Yeah, I would say the click moment is two pieces. I would say the first thing is just time to a MVP is the biggest thing. When we talk about an idea, like for this project, we'll just keep it on the same one. When we talk about an idea, let's say we talked about it at the end of January, we had a MVP essentially by the middle or late February. And this was a huge suite, 4 different like unique applications, and then all of the permissioning stuff that went on with it. But it was really fast for that initial development. I think that's like the one thing that just seems to impress everything within everyone when they are working within Foundry, because you just can't develop that fast in many other tools.
And how many people made that?
That was 2 people.
Okay, so you didn't need 50 people on a button.
That's right.
Right?
That was
like
2
Silicon
people.
Valley, right?
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
crazy, right?
2 people.
And the other person's background, what's their background?
The other person's background had never worked in Foundry before a year ago.
They just had business knowledge, right?
Yep.
They just understood the client side.
Yeah.
Exactly, right?
Understood the client side. They had some technical background. They had come from a tech background, but they had no Foundry experience before that.
Yeah, so you don't always need a wall walker. That's what we call them in the intelligence community. They can code, but they stare at their toes, right? Yeah. Someone who can interface, understand, business needs and process. That's really cool. 2 people.
Yeah. You take your people that know business, and they can solve the problems that they're intimately aware of in the way that they can solve them, right? Because I think a lot of things, it all comes down to like systems and processes, right? And a lot of systems and processes of organizations just come organically throughout the time, right? Like we need an ERP, so you got some guy in IT who picks the ERP system, and now you do purchase orders this way because SAP told you to do them this way. And it's like, if you really think about the way that you want your purchase orders to work, it's going to be different, right? But now, like an Apple, like a Tesla, who build their own custom software internally because they have the ability to do so, now you as a business who doesn't typically have the ability to do so, you can build software around the ideal systems and processes. So now, as a manufacturer, it's like, if everybody's on SAP or Oracle, what competitive advantage do you have? Right? But once you build your own custom system, that's your moat, right? That's how you end up getting that competitive advantage. And I think, especially with a lot of these legacy businesses, they grow through acquisitions over time. So they have all of these different systems that are hard to aggregate, right? And I think this is something that kind of you guys are doing right now as well, where it's like, sure, you got 50 suppliers in the platform, but they all have different data and different systems, right? And they've got different schemas and stuff. So how are you guys taking all of that and putting it into a platform where like all their data sources are all going to be different? The way that their data is viewed is different, but it is all supply chain and procurement data. So like, how are you guys getting from here and all this disparate data and normalizing it together to be able to get some type of outcome for them?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the biggest value propositions for this tool that we're building, is being able to make all of these different organizations essentially speak the same language. Because that's one problem within healthcare supply chain, is that the example that our customer or partner loves to use is blue gloves. There may be one single blue glove product, but 50 organizations have 50 different names for it and 50 different IDs for it. So what we do is we take in their data and through a medallion architecture, standardize it into a standard schema. And then we're able to use one core set of applications to display that data. We also have a back-end portion of this that connects those different items together. So those 50 different blue gloves are identified as one single blue glove produced by X manufacturer. And that way, those different organizations can know that they are talking about the same item, but they are still seeing it in their language or their item ID, for example. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So we're not changing anyone's workflows. They're still seeing the item as they would in their own source system. But we know that we're enabling these two organizations to essentially speak the same language.
You know, on USG, they released, I think it's called like Gov AI. So you can just go build your own agent. And I'm botching his last name, but Nicholas Schillen or something like that. He was like the 13th or 14th CTO of the Air Force. He made Ask Sage, if you heard of them. They got acquired by Big Bear AI. And yeah, they put out an article, I think, you know, Department of War did, that there's been like 10,000 agents made, you know, on Gov AI platforms. And you probably only need like 100 to actually do the job, right? But those things are all siloed, you know, wasted compute, wasted costs. You know, if you did that in like Envision instead of, you know, just wherever Gov AI is, it'd probably be a lot more efficient, right? So you have all these guys making siloed agents for their like very specific tasks that I'm assuming there's probably 100 other people with that same task somewhere, you know, if they're in Tinker Air Force Base or someone at Bragg, you know, so you're going to create more problems with AI that Envision or Foundry, however you want to quantify it, can solve, you know?
And it's more compute,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then like when you factor it all in, like they're talking about the cost usage of everything, right? And it's like, you know, I've seen a lot of articles recently talking about how like it's actually more expensive for an AI agent to do the job than it would be for a human to do the job.
Now they're hiring junior devs to fix the AI.
Right.
It's a revolving door, right?
Right. And that's like the MIT report basically like, I don't know, maybe 7-8 months ago that was talking about how 95% of enterprise AI deployments fail. Yeah. It's exactly what we were talking about there. Where like the 5% is the Palantir, the ontology driven. That's the enterprise AI that succeeds.
Well, and the problem is people want AI because they see it in the news, C-suite hears that buzzword, and they're just like, we need AI. But their data's a mess, right? So your outcomes with the AI are going to be even more of a mess. Yeah. And so they don't follow the proper processes, whereas in Foundry, it's a lot easier to do, right? You can even get AI to help organize and your ontology and your data and everything. Exactly.
Big time.
That's what I understand with some things, like USG, right? Like, you know, Air Force pays for Envision, you know, Big Army pays for Vantage, and it's still not fully utilized by all these like commands across the Department of War. So, which is weird to me, right? I mean, they have free reign to do whatever they want. So I think it's just like an adoption process too. I think over time, naturally, more and more people will start using it. Same with commercial, right? I think it's the same thing. It's just going to take time.
So say you had like your absolute dream deployment. Not that what you're on right now isn't, but you had your absolute dream deployment. You know, I can pick anything in the world to do, any industry, any business, any use case. You got a team of like 10 guys, you got an unlimited budget. What are you doing? What are you building?
That is tough. That is tough. I would want to pick a passion project, but man, honestly, don't know. To be honest, one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot is how much small businesses could use the tools in Foundry if they had access to it. Obviously, not all of many small businesses could not afford to have Foundry. It's mostly large enterprises. So building some sort of software as a service or a product of Foundry that can be used by small businesses throughout the country, I think that would be a great tool. I think that could be a really awesome use case because there's so many small businesses that could improve their efficiencies and be utilizing these tools and really take advantage of them. I think that would be a really interesting use case for it.
I mean, a lot of the small businesses, they run off notepads.
Yeah.
Right? Like my buddy owns an HVAC company, and he is his back office. Right. So I mean, there's instances. I mean, you could think how much more revenue they could increase by time back. You know, he was over at my house. He's answering phone calls at 8 p.m. Right, doing a service call, emergency service call at 10 p.m. You know, if you had Foundry to organize all that, taking that data, inbound calls. I mean, there's so much possibilities.
And we see like the most successful companies that point themselves at Foundry as like an operating system, looking at it as an operating system and not looking at it as just like point solutions, right? And so if you're able to build that, you know, agnostic operating system for small businesses where it's like, hey, give me time cards, give me an HRMS, you know, give me an ERP, give me an SRM, give me a CRM that I can use. And then, you know, like, I think a cool end stage is the ability to tweak it to exactly kind of like what you specifically need, like we were talking about before, being able to kind of tweak it around your specific processes, right? I know that this is not a new idea. Like SAP had this idea, Salesforce had this idea of like, let's create agnostic and then let's send people out that can customize it. But like, ask how many businesses that's worked for, right? Like I did a $50 million SAP integration over 5 years, and it's like, what value are you getting, right? And it's an interesting point where like, are people asking about the ROI of implementing SAP as your ERP? Not really. It's just an implementation thing. So like Palantir gets treated with a little bit more of like a skeptical lens because people don't really know what it does. So they're like, well, what's the ROI, right? Kind of coming back to this conversation, and especially with executive teams who don't fully understand, they want that financial ROI, but it's difficult to give them that financial ROI when it's like, we don't know how inefficient your processes are. We don't know where the gaps are. Where something that I learned was that the ROI has to be partially financial. It has to be partially vision driven, where it's like, what is the ROI to you as a business leader when I know real time if we're profitable or not and how we can fix that. And I know that I can take vacation and I can sit on the beach with my iPad and be fully locked in. Like, right? There's so many business leaders who, like, especially the small business leaders, they feel like they can never take vacation. Right? Because they have to be there and be a part of everything and every single decision. But it's like, when you create the right systems and processes and bake that into your software, business starts to run itself.
And another reason I say small businesses is because some of the most successful people I've seen use Foundry are subject matter experts, because they are the ones that have been doing this work for 20 years, and all of a sudden they get access to this tool that is just incredible. It can do everything they've ever wanted to do, and they just can't get enough of it. And they come up with solutions for all of their problems in Foundry. So I think that from that lens, it would also produce some of the best developers like of this. They would all be able to go and build their own products in this suite. Yeah.
Super cool, super great conversation. I mean, it's always the thing that I always say is that, like, my wife is super tired of hearing me talk about Foundry and Palantir, and I can sit here and talk for hours about it. And I mean, like, it's so cool to hear other people's stories and the way that they come to the platform, and then the way that they drive value and just keep racking up wins within it. You know, like, I know Kevin mentioned like his biggest win, but I bet like there's yeah. So thanks for coming. Thanks for coming
you guys
on.
for having me on. It's been a great conversation, and I look forward to listening to the other ones in the future.
Yeah.